Good day and welcome to another edition of the 11th OVC. This week on the 11th OVC, what we're going to be talking about is the common fatigue blouse or sack coat. As a cavalry reenactor, what jacket to choose obviously becomes a very quick decision that you have to make when putting together your impression. To go with, whether to go with sack coats or shell jackets. So in this episode, that's what we're going to talk about, is specifically the sack coat. Simply put, the sack coat is by far the best investment into your impression. It arguably is the most authentic option of the two and most flexible option between the two. Using the sack coat as a basis of your impression allows you to transcend many different impressions. It is designed to be the fatigue blouse, the shirt or the jacket that you are wearing during manual labor. However, it quickly became the most common jacket used by the federal troopers during the American Civil War. So what did soldiers think about this item? Although the sack coat was becoming popular as a civilian style, some men who were issued blouses as part of their military uniform were expecting something, let's say, definitely a little bit more militaristic or military-like. One new recruit wrote an explanation to his sister as to why he not visited his family or nearby acquaintances who lived near his post. He wrote the following, quote, "I've not been to Williams yet. The only reason is because I hate to be seen by my relatives with this bobtailed on." This poor soldier apparently didn't know the fatigue blouse was designed as a working garment, not the overall dress uniform of the military. It was not intended to make a military fashion statement, but, as soldiers soon learned, very practical and functional. Experienced soldiers, however, soon learned to appreciate the practicality of the sack coat. This is evidenced by many men who bought tailor-made sack coats or other versions of this that provided the same general fit, but with perhaps different pockets, bigger pockets, or even longer skirts. Some officers wore enlisted pattern blouses as well to avoid drawing attention in battle. A combat-wise officer of the 10th Maine wrote the following just before the Battle of Antietam. "I have almost vowed never to wear anything by a dirty private's uniform which I wear on march. An officer needs only to wear a uniform when on duty of dignity. On marches in battle, he needs only to wear a small shoulder strap which a man at 60 yards cannot see. Half the army officers are prudent enough to be uniform like the men. I do not wear even the straps, but trust to my bugle for protection among strangers." Now, when it comes to sizes, the federal issue pattern, or the sack coat, how it was contracted out, generally had four major sizes. Size 1 had a 32-inch sleeve length and a 36-inch chest. Size 2 had a 33-inch arm or sleeve length and a 38-inch chest. Size 3 had a 34-inch sleeve length and a 40-inch chest, and size 4 had a 35-inch sleeve length and a 42-inch chest. However, according to some other records, a New York contractor, J.T. Martin, had a small, very small, late war contract for larger blouses size 5, 6, and 7. The total number of this contract only called for about 1,000 blouses, which would not have made much of an impact on the soldiers in the field, most of which who were definitely forced to make the decision between the standard four sizes, whether they're too short, too long, too tight, too big. So they were other sizes, 5, 6, and 7, but the standard 4 were the standard 4. They were NUG. Those four sizes were made by a variety of contractors, in fact, hundreds of contractors. The Army of the Potomac was issued clothing that originated from either Philadelphia or New York. The Western units were supplied using depots in Ohio, Missouri, and some other states possibly. Besides those coats actually made under the system operated by Philadelphia Depot, there were many produced by contractors, particularly for the New York Depot, which had no manufacturing capability. So just a partial list of contracted production numbers for the major firms, the major contractors include, names like, J.T. Martin, which had contracts of over 1 million sack coats or fatigue blouses. J.F. Page had 264,000 sack coats that he was contracted out to. James Boylan, 500,000. Thomas Carhart, which Actually, I wonder Carhartt. I wonder if that was the start of Carhartt. I don't know. I have to look into that. But 325,000. William Deering, 200,000. Alex T. Lane in Philadelphia, 132,000. You have F.J. Rosenberg for 100,000. Henry Scott in Philadelphia for 65,000. I mean, you ultimately had millions of sack coats and these fatigue blouses produced during the American Civil War, which made sense why there was so much of a surplus after the war. Something very important to understand as a reenactor as well is also the dark blue color, the indigo dye blue color, so familiar on these sack coats and fatigue blouses. This distinct blue color of the Union Army was achieved by using indigo dye. The use of this dye requires a very skilled craftsman. It is very temperamental, and the color of the cloth cannot be judged by the dye pot itself, since it actually takes the color after being removed from the dye pot and exposed to the being oxygenated. Many other factors will also affect the final color, like age, temperature, dye pot material, what type of material the dye pot was made out of. And so basically, in short, it was impossible to control the exact shade that was produced. Surviving garments exhibit a fairly wide variety of colors, most being a shade of dark, rich blue, but not electric blue, and never purplish navy blue. The originals will exhibit much of the same color as they did during the war, even today in modern day age, since indigo is not really known for fading. When it comes to reproduction sack coats that we wear in reenacting, the biggest value of getting a good campaigner quality jacket is that it won't fade to bluish purple, which makes you stand out like a sore thumb when you're in line of battle or when you're in formation. This is the single biggest thing I can tell you as a reenactor, or when you're looking to purchase gear, whether it's the indigo dye sack coat, fatigue blouse, shell jacket, or even the pants. Getting the right dyed fabric is critical, because you do not want your sack coat to fade purple, because the originals did not fade purple. It doesn't take more than a couple campaign seasons, couple reenacting seasons for your mainstream quality sack coat to fade to purple, and very quickly you realize that you stand out like a sore thumb. So again, if you don't take anything out of this video, take that one thing, is get a good quality dyed sack coat so you don't turn purple. So now let's talk about the linings that are in our sack coats. The two basic varieties of blouses issued during the war were lined and unlined. The lined blouses were generally preferred for cooler weather, obviously, although some soldiers wore lined blouses year-round. As far as what was normal, usual, or general, or again, NUG, there were 3 times more lined sack coats than unlined. The sleeves themselves were normally lined with an inexpensive lightweight material such as cotton muslin. But all in all, you make sure that, again, what was NUG, 3 times more blouses were lined than unlined. So in choosing whether to buy lined or unlined, understand there was more NUG to have it lined. So now let's talk about the patterns of sack coats that were out there. When referring to the different style of patterns, it is actually inaccurate to say, and more of a reenactorism, to call it an 1861 model or model 1863. That was a term used a few decades back inaccurately by reenactors. The best way to refer to the different types of patterns of sack coats is by the different depots or the contractors that they came from, when possible. And again, sometimes it's not possible to determine which contractor built them, but when possible, that's what we're looking for. The variations that can be identified in particular makers include Schuylkill, who sometimes use square collars, and of course J.T. Martin, the infamous J.T. Martin, his coats who came with extremely narrow cuffs. Unlike many other Civil War garments, sack coats are made without any raw edges due to the loose weave of the material, which would quickly fray if left unhemmed or unsewn. And of course, after talking about the patterns, we got to talk about the construction of the most common sack coat. Although the specifications called for a dark blue linen thread for stitching, it was not always followed. The sewing thread in one coat that we analyzed, or that's on the internet available to look at, found to be 100% cotton thread. The color of the original thread has also been much studied over the years. A common dye stuff for thread of the period was a substance called logwood, which would produce a dark blue or even black color when new, but which rapidly fades to brown when exposed to the air or when out in the elements. Logwood was inexpensive, and since the government didn't specify what dye to use on the thread, the cheapest option obviously won. One commonly examined jacket actually had thread which was darker than the rest of the coat. As we previously stated though, unlike many other Civil War garments, these fatigue blouses were made without any raw edges due to, again, to the loose weave of the material, which would quickly fray if left unhemmed, unlike you have the overcoats and a few other items that the soldiers wore. Sack coats had to be hemmed all the way around because of the type of loose weave it had. Keep in mind that there are always exceptions to this norm, but again, we are more concerned about what was normal rather than all the exceptions to what was not normal. Unlined coats actually take more labor to produce due to the necessity of flat felling all of the seams. This was not needed in lined coats since the lining would protect the seams from abrasion and fraying. A flat felled seam is folded over and whip stitched into the garment. Again, you could argue to try to get an authentic style sack coat, a lined sack coat is definitely by far the best way to go. Even if you try to save money and go unlined, you may not save money in trying to flat fell all the seams that will be up against your body in the rest of your uniform. Now also with the buttonholes, almost everyone that I've been able to research and get my hands on, and of course research on the internet as well versus what I can get with my hands, all buttonholes that I've seen have been hand sewn. However, the rest of the garment is kind of a toss up on whether it's hand sewn or machine sewn. You guys who know your machine and know your history, know sewing machines were around during the Civil War, but which depot we're talking about really dictates whether you're dealing with machine sewn sack coats or hand sewn sack coats. Philadelphia Depot jackets were 100% hand sewn, in addition to a lot of other hand sewn contractors as well. However, J.T. Martin used machine stitching in the bodies of his coats and only used hand sewn features in the linings, buttonholes, and stuff like that. And as was with most of the garments of that time period, the actual quality of the stitching will vary on the ability of the original craftsman who made it. If you had a seamstress who just sucked, then obviously your sack coat's gonna suck. And if you had a really good seamstress, then your sack coat is going to be very well put together. Same holds true then as same holds true now. Now talking about the pockets. Pockets are a very unique and integral part of the description of the sack coat. One of the most common variations of these jackets included the pockets. Blouses were generally made with a single pocket set in the left breast of the coat. Most were kidney shaped, although some coats attributed to the Philadelphia Depot had square bottom pockets. So as we move into our next category, our next topic, which is common soldier modifications and bringing pockets in with this, again, modifying your pockets or creating other pockets were also a common modification. Although, let's talk about some other modifications guys did. How to wear the sack coat properly, how to modify it. Although the looseness of the sack coat presented few difficulties for getting a tolerable fit for most people, some soldiers, obviously as we do today, rolled up the cuffs and shortened the sleeve length if it didn't fit them. Although not technically a modification or a permanent modification, it was done and can be seen in a few period photographs. One modification occasionally seen on blouses is the shortening of the skirts to imitate the length of a shell jacket and the addition of buttons. But again, not very common. You could probably tell why. If guys originally didn't like the loose fit and the non-military style of the sack coat, you could see and maybe understand how they would modify the sack coat to look like a shell jacket. And as we talked about previously, a more common modification involved the addition of extra pockets. A soldier gave the following advice to a potential recruit back home. He said, "Have your blouse lined if not made so, and have 2 pockets in it. You cannot carry much in your pants and your legs will get chafed." Another soldier in the U.S. Regulars wrote to his sister on June 2nd, 1863, quote, "I have just cut off the buttons and threw away my blouse, having worn it exactly a year. That extra pocket you made in it done good service. I miss it in my new one." Now let's apply what we just learned about the originals to our reproductions and our impression and reenacting in general. There's always a danger when describing what to look for in reproduction by detailing the various parts of the originals, especially when comments are used like most common method, most common thing, nug, or the most common feature was XYZ. If you actually put together all those nuances into one sack coat, you would have a very non-authentic sack coat. So, you know, variations of the pattern of construction that are not mix and match, that's what you're looking for. So that's why we strongly urge you to stick with an original and maybe, you know, recreate that, or stick with a contractor and recreate that. So when looking for your sack coat, stick with what you've seen rather than saying all these different intricacies I'm going to put into my sack coat, because what you do if you do that will be a very inauthentic and very farby impression. So let's sum up all the information that we learned in this video and boil it down to number one, how we look authentic in the field as a reenactor with your sack coat. So number one boiled down point is choosing a standard sack coat is definitely more normal, usual, and general, more nug than any other type of jacket out there. Number two, which actually should be number one, do not get a jacket that will fade to purple. This is the biggest indication of the quality of the dye versus even the fabric, and makes you look bad very quickly. And finally, number three, feel free to modify your jacket as long as you have a basis for it. Don't take a whole bunch of nuances and stick it into your jacket. Take one or two and personalize it, and I guarantee you'll be more authentic than the guy next to you. And that's it for now about talking about sack coats and fatigue blouses. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was worth your while and you learned a little bit about the fatigue blouse or sack coat. I challenge you to make personal modifications. Enjoy reenacting as a hobby. It can be a very awesome, very fun hobby. And I ask that if you enjoyed this video, please like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, and share us whenever you can. We appreciate your attention, appreciate your viewing and your watching us, and hope you enjoy the 11th OVC next time. Thanks again and have a great day.